Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to show you the initial steps to teaching a puppy a sit or a down stay. The full tutorial on how to train a stay is in the description below. So this is what I would naturally do with a young puppy that hasn't learned any cues or doesn't know how to follow a lure. Now, I would teach the puppy to follow a lure without licking and biting so that you can train behaviors. But for position changes, if you just got a new puppy, one way of getting the behavior is simply feeding your puppy a treat like this and drip feeding the puppy a treat to get the puppy into the position of laying down. Because if you just try to lure the puppy, what can happen is that they're going to lick and bite at the treat in your hand. So you can just feed them a treat. So I've got this chicken treat right here, and I'm just letting her nibble at it, and then I'm going to lift the treat up into the sit while she's nibbling like that. If you have a very squirmy puppy, this will help them stop them from doing 101 things while you move the treat down and back up. Good job. So you're just going to practice your luring skills. You don't have to use any marker words or say anything. So you're just feeding the puppy and practicing getting the different positions. So to get the stand from the down, I'm lifting the treat at a diagonal away from the puppy's body, and then when I want the puppy to go back into the down, I'm moving the treat back into the puppy, and I can put the treat on the ground like this, so when the puppy's in the down position, they're expecting the treat to come from below, and that will help from stopping them popping up for the treat. Okay, so to go from the down into the sit, I'm going to move the treat up like that, and then back into the down and forwards a little bit. Now you might have to experiment with your puppy, and at first when I started training her, she wouldn't want to even lay on this carpet, so I used a cushy bed to initially get her to lay in the down position. Good job. So once your puppy is moving nicely from the different positions while nibbling on little bits of treats like this, then what you're going to do is you're going to start to remove the treat. So I'm going to lure her into the sit position like that, and then I'm going to lift the treat away and bring it back like that. So as you can see, the angle that I'm moving the treat away is keeping her in the sit position. If I were just to move my hand like this, she might get up to follow my hand. And the same with the down. So once the dog is in the down position, I'm going to move the treat forwards away from her rather than up like this, because it might encourage her to follow the treat and get out of the position because she has no idea why she's getting the treats yet. So here we go, into the stand. I'm going to, we haven't really worked on the stand at all yet, but once she's in the stand position, I'm going to move the treat away like that and then bring it back. So she doesn't even have time to follow it because it's coming back to her. Once you've gotten to that step, you can start to use a clicker or a marker word. So you lure the dog into the correct position, such as a sit. You can mark, feed, and then you can click as the treat hand moves away from the puppy. So you're clicking your puppy for staying still. Now, I saw my puppy's feet move a little bit, so I want to make sure that I'm getting some nice still feet before I mark and reinforce. Good. Awesome. Free. And then, once you're starting to get multiple repetitions of marking and reinforcing the dog in the position, you want to quickly teach the puppy a release cue. So mine is free, and that means you can get up. So you can say the cue to sit or down if you want to, if your dog is reliably following the lure into the different positions, but I would usually add that cue when the dog can stay for at least 10 seconds in the position. Then you can say down and then mark and reinforce. But for the release cue, because I use it with all the different behaviors that I do, I'm going to say the cue, free, and then I'm going to encourage the dog to follow to get the treat so that it's not confusing, that they know when they're staying they shouldn't get the treat, and when they're released that they can get a treat that's moved away from them. Ready? So I'm going to lure her into the down position and drop a treat there and move my hand away, and then when she can stay like that, I'm going to start marking and reinforcing. The moment that my hand goes away, I mark, and then I bring the treat back to her. And then when she gets better, I can go and collect more treats out of this hand that's holding the treats, like that. If she were to get up from the position like that, I'm just going to lure her back into the position and go back to putting the treat down between her paws like that. Good job. Then I'm going to release her, free, and encourage her up by moving my hand. So first I say the release cue, then I move the hand, and you can use a word like get it as well to get them interested in getting the treat. If you've done a lot of leave it exercises, you can encourage your puppy to follow a treat by saying get it, or making a kissy noise, or moving backwards. But because she's so small, that's why I'm sitting down here with her. Okay. Now from the standing position, I'm going to click and reinforce her for standing like that. And then I'm going to start to increase the amount of time that she waits before I bring the treat back to her. Good. Free. Get it. Awesome. So for the first few training sessions with my little puppy, I was just drip feeding the treats like this and teaching her the different positions and how to get into them by feeding her, letting her nibble on the treat as she got into the positions. So teaching the sit, to the down, to the stand, get it. She knows there's no treat there, get it. To the sit, and then sit to stand, like that. Good. Good job. And then after those first few training sessions where I could get to the point where I was able to move my hand away, then I started marking and reinforcing her for staying a little bit longer each time. So I'd feed her a treat and then move my hand away, mark and reinforce. And then if she just got up, I would lure her back into the position and begin again, and remember to release her at some point. Free. Good job. Now, as you can see, she's really good at staying in the positions, not as much in the stand as the sit and the down. The down is probably her strongest because we worked on that one a lot, and not so much the sit or the stand. And now I'm going to add the cues for the behaviors. So because she can stay in the position for 10 to 15 seconds, I can then start to add the cue. Because the problem with if they quickly pop out of position, if you don't give them the treat soon enough, is that you keep saying sit, 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 and down, down, down. So I prefer to add the verbal cue a little bit later, but you can add the different hand signals right from the start. So to do that, you pretend to get a treat, and when the dog is in the down position, you lift your hand up like that, and then give them a treat. So there's no treat in your hand, but you're pretending to have the treat in the same way that you had it when you were luring the dog and letting them nibble on the treat. And now there's no treat in your hand, and you're marking and reinforcing the dog for following the hand signal. Now also, if your dog has gotten better at luring, you can then have the treat in your hand away from the dog's mouth so they're not nibbling at your hand if you haven't given them the treat yet. So I'm holding the treat like this, away from the dog's mouth so that she's not nibbling at it. And when I want her to eat the treat, I'm holding it like this, like I'm feeding a baby bird so that she can eat it as she moves. And when I don't want her to eat it, I have my hand the other way. Get it. Get it. Good. Good job. So the hand signals you can teach your dog are based on the way that you've lured the dog. So to get the dog from a down to a sit, a gesture like this. And to get the dog to lay down, a gesture like that. And for stand, I use an open hand like this. And to initially train it, the open hand has a treat in it. And I say, get it, to the dog. Get it. And I wiggle it if the dog doesn't think they can have it. So stand to down to sit, and then sit to stand, get it, which she hasn't worked on yet. But she should, because it will be good for her back legs. Get it. Awesome. Get it. Woohoo. Now I really need to work on stand because watch, when I let go of the treat, she goes automatically into the other positions I've reinforced. So if you notice that happening, your dog, when you're trying to teach them to down, they start sitting or you're trying to teach them to sit and they keep laying down, it means that you just need to reinforce the other position as well. And I like to work on at least 3 at the same time. So if you're working on sit, down, and stand, it's going to be less confusing than if you just work on sit and down, because then the dog might alternate between the different positions if they don't know what you want. To add the verbal cue, you say it just before you move to do the visual cue or the luring gesture. So I'm going to say sit, and then I'm going to move my hand like that. Say down, and then move my hand like that. Awesome. Usually, if the puppy has learned to follow your hand gesture from a distance at first, that's going to then help with teaching the new cue, because the dog is they're reliant on your hand being there with the treat. They haven't yet learned to down while your hands are away, and so the distance they are from the treat will also affect their ability to be able to do the behavior. So if you've gotten to the point where you can have the treats here and the dog is still sitting and downing, it's going to be way easier to add the verbal cue where your hands aren't even near the dog. So I'm going to say down, and then I'm going to move my hand gesture to get the dog to lay down. And we worked on shake, and that's why the puppy is offering pawing at my hand. And as I said in the shake tutorial, which I just made, that you don't really want to teach that as one of your first behaviors that you teach your puppy, or you'll get a little bit of offering of pawing, and it can be frustrating if you're trying to train new things like sitting down. You get waving while they're doing it, which is kind of cute if it's a Chihuahua, but maybe not cute if it's an enormous Great Dane. Training the puppy to listen to the cues while you're standing up, you'll need to do an approximations. So here you can see I'm bending over as I do the hand signals really close down to the ground as the initial step to then being able to stand up and do the hand signals or say the verbal cues. If you're uncomfortable with bending over like this, you could do the exercise sitting in a chair. You can also practice having your puppy at your left and your right side when cueing the puppy to change positions and stay in positions. Awesome. Down. Good. Get it. Down. Good. Get it. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support my work, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. You can also become a supporting member of channel Kikopup by clicking the join button. See you later.